After the success of Devil May Cry 1, a sequel was made, but when it came out in 2003, there was mixed reception towards it. Here is my review on Devil May Cry 2. The first game is generally regarded as a classic. Yes, there were some issues with it, but those were overshadowed by just how much the game brought to the genre. When I first played it, I loved it for what it was. I will not deny that I am someone who started at 3 and went forward, then back to 1, but when I played this one for the first time, I could already tell it felt completely different. Like certain things which made the first one so good were absent here. And I will not deny that I have heard many things regarding 2 that it was not exactly good. Me personally, I have a lot of mixed feelings on it, so let's see what this one has. As a little disclaimer, I might be a bit critical in this video, so just want to mention it here. Devil May Cry 2 is an action-adventure and hack-and-slash game just like the first one. It is available on all modern platforms, but just like the first one, it was originally only on the PS2. It is notable for having 2 different discs, which end up being the 2 campaigns for the game. The story of the game starts with our new protag, Lucia, in a museum obtaining one of the 4 pieces of the Arcana, this piece being the coin. When this happens, demons attack and then Dante shows up to help take them down. After this, Lucia invites Dante to Dumary Island where he meets with Mater, who is Lucia's mother. She knows Dante as she fought alongside Sparta with her clan way back when. She informs Dante about who he and Lucia have to take out, that person being Arius, who owns the corporate company Ouroboros and plans to release Argosax to essentially turn the world into a mess full of demons. This is the setup of the story. Now compared to the first, the story is not amazing. I mean, it's okay, but nothing noteworthy, which is disappointing considering how the first one was. Just like the first game, it takes place on an island known as Dumary Island, though this time there is a lot more space around as it's divided into sections like factories, cities, and the outskirts. Although something you may not know is apparently the game was supposed to take place in New York, which I gotta be honest, I didn't even know until I looked into it. Interesting things you can find out, you could say. The island itself is not the best. There are some parts that are good, but others not so much. Now let's get into the gameplay where there are some significant changes. Back in the first game I mentioned how you can do delay combos. You had a few at your disposal, and here it's kind of the same, but doing the combos is way different this time. Instead of doing delay inputs, you have to do this weird directional thing with the analog stick where you move it in a direction. If this sounds odd, that's because it is. It doesn't help that the lock-on has been changed as well to where it's always locking on enemies. This can be very annoying as trying to take out other enemies will prove more difficult than it really should be. I mean, look at it this way. If you were to experiment trying out combos, DMC1 you would kind of get it quick, whereas here it would be more confusing. Then we have the dodging, which has also been changed. Instead of locking on and hitting a button, DMC2 has it where it's a dedicated button for dodging. This I have mixed feelings on. It's of course easier to pull off as it's only one button input, but at the same time when fighting enemies I can forget that it's a thing and end up trying to do the normal way of dodging attacks, so that can be odd. The big reason why I don't like the dodge is the fact that you can run up walls, which, well, this is something I never do in the game, like, ever. And you have to watch out when you do this, because sometimes if you try to dodge an attack, you can just go up the wall instead, which can really throw you off. Now I mention all this, which is again mixed, but the funny thing is you don't even have to try much in the way of tactics because the enemy AI is not good. It does get better on higher difficulties, but on normal, which is the one you start with since easy mode is not a thing here, the enemies just don't do much. You can literally run past them like they weren't even there. Heck, you could go close to them and sometimes they won't even attack. I am not even joking. And speaking of the AI, let's get into the enemies themselves. So I adored the enemies in the first game and how they were handled, plus they were very memorable, but here, not so much. The basic enemies are okay, but don't really cause that much trouble at all, especially with how much damage you can do with your weapons. I will admit that some of the late game ones are kind of cool, but they come off as more large demons who don't really have much to them. Even the magician ones that you fight are sadly not the greatest. Now we get to the bosses, and here we have a lot more compared to the first game. Here the bosses are more giant demons with large amounts of health. Of course they do have different attacks compared to normal enemies, but none of them are all that memorable nor great. It's really sad as some look really cool. One of the big ones being the building demon, but even with this one, all it does is just shoot a giant laser across the screen which you can easily jump over. Don't get me wrong, not all the bosses are bad. In fact, one of the more challenging ones is the water arms thing. Legit, this is actually a rare fight that can give trouble if you don't know its gimmick. The other one being the larva. This one I don't like as much. Some of the other bosses though are brutal to deal with, including the infamous infested tanks and Chopper. Fighting these things is honestly some of the worst parts of the game. Not because it's tough from a skill point of view, but you gotta have patience when fighting them. They have so much health and it literally takes forever. The tanks are just normal enemies, but the Chopper is the boss here. Just like the tanks, this is a brutal fight. It rarely gets close, so you can only use your guns and it's very boring. One could say it's like the Griffin fights from 1, but at least with those it proved more of a challenge and there were several opportunities to hit at close range. Here, the Chopper never gets close and it literally is just gun the fight. In fact, a lot of these bosses are just gun the fight, like the 3-headed boss. Now this one has more challenge, yes, but it's still not good. This was the fight that really made me think the devs only looked at the guns as the main way of attacking. Also, they reused 2 bosses from the first game here. Phantom is here, and when you fight it, Dante says literally nothing. Very strange choice. What might be even stranger is the fact that Griffin is here, but only in moveset and not himself. If Griffin was supposed to come back, then why only the moveset? Stuff like this just screams rushed. Is there a boss in this that I like, you might be wondering? Well, the answer is yes, and that would be the final boss for Dante's route. This fight actually has some really good stuff going for it, like teleporting around and using many different types of attacks. It's very much like Nella Angelo in the first game. Yes, just like other fights you can just use guns, but here there is more variety, and doing melee is honestly okay. The only issue with the fight is, well, for it being the best fight in the game for me, it's the final fight, so that's kind of a problem. I've mentioned it a lot, but now let's get into what is arguably the biggest change with DMC2's combat, which is the guns. They are powerful as hell. It's actually insane. Just firing at lesser demons can start juggling them, which means you don't even need to launch them yourself. Take maybe 2 or 3 seconds and it will start right away. This can literally happen as you start the game. Beforehand, demons would take a lot of bullets and you had to use weapons like the shotgun or grenade launcher in order to take them out easier. It made sense since you get the weapons as you progress in the game. Here, they are overpowered from the start, and this goes for all of them as well. By the way, the upgrading system in the game is not good. The only thing you upgrade is the strength of said weapon, and it doesn't help that even though there are different swords, they are basically all the same. It's such a letdown compared to before where you had different swords, but also a gauntlet. Somewhere it does say that the swords have different stats, but honestly, even after the upgrading, there is not really much to separate them. I will say this though, the best part about the guns in this game is the fact that now there is a button they can use in order to switch between them on the fly. This is a fantastic change because going to the menus each time before did get annoying, so at least there is this. I've talked a lot about Dante, but here we have a new pro tag, Lucia. With her, she does play a little faster than Dante, but also has the same input, which means she also has the same odd combo system. Though something I do like is that when playing as her, you do see different levels in the story. In fact, one that is unique to her is going up the clock tower while using her devil trigger. But there is one in her route which is not fun at all, and guess what it is? Yep, the underwater levels. In the first game there were a few parts where you had to do these types of levels, but they were so short that it didn't even have much of an impact. Here it certainly has an impact and it's not good. At least the ones before were short. Here there are dedicated levels and the controls are not the best. I feel like I've been saying that a lot, but it's true. I guess the only major difference with these levels now is the fact that it's third person, but that's really it. It's not really fun at all. She does get to fight some bosses that Dante does not, and there are a few that she fights in different areas than when Dante would fight them normally, but the big change is the final fight being different. At least Lucia doesn't have to fight the chopper. In fact, she doesn't even stay in that area for long. For Lucia, you have less levels to play, but more on this later. Let's get into something positive about the game, and that is the devil trigger system. Just like the first game, when you have enough DT, you can use it, which gives you damage boost and restores some health. This is usual with DT, but the new stuff that's here are the amulets. This game is very unique as you can customize parts of your devil trigger. Do you want even more damage or more health restored? You can pick between those two. Which element do you want when attacking enemies? You have a choice of 3. Do you want to move faster or fly when using Devil Trigger? You can do this. The only downside to all the customization is that you have to find the amulets. Why is this bad? The exploration in DMC2 is way different. Firstly, the levels are huge and certain sections have literally nothing except for a tiny red orb. Going around these levels with an eerie soundtrack but not much else is honestly a drag. As series usual, you will encounter demons, but don't be surprised if there are large chunks of levels where nothing happens. The levels themselves vary where they have some nice like the village and city, but then there are some that just look bad, mainly some caverns that you venture throughout where it looks like copy and paste all over. But the big thing for me is the fact that you cannot inspect stuff this time. The little bit of world building from before is sadly not here, and even though it wasn't a lot, it was nice seeing Dante's thoughts on an item whenever he looked at it. Back to the Devil Trigger really quick, I have to mention what might be my favorite addition to the game, which is Dante's secret Devil Trigger form, Majin Devil Trigger. This is a secret addition to the game where even activating it has a special condition. In order to use it, you have to have low health, like super low to the point where it turns red. When this happens, you get unique animation, which looks cool by the way, and you get to use its power. The Majin form has its own moves and it's amazing. Plus you are invincible and have huge attack boost. One little thing you can do, by the way, when you use Majin form is you can use an item during it which doesn't affect the form at all. Why do I mention this? Because you have to be at extreme low health to use it, and well, since you're invincible, you might as well use a recovery item. The Majin form is only for Dante, but there are certain moves that, let's just say, inspired someone else's moveset. Who is this certain someone? Well, DMC2 actually has a hidden playable character, and that character is Trish. Yes, she is here playable this time, and if I am being completely honest, she is great, might even be the best character in the game. Trish plays like how Dante would in the first game with the delayed combos, and when I found that out, I knew right away that she was going to be great to play as. She has the same combos, but also a unique feature where she puts the Devil Sword down and resorts to using her electric fists, which reminds you of Ifrit's moves from the first game. While doing this, you can recall the sword any time to use it again, and best of all, her Devil Trigger has a lot of the same moves used by Dante. In fact, in the air, she has a few of Dante's Majin form. It's so cool to see Trish playable in the game this time. Also, her guns don't juggle enemies unless she is in DT. You might be wondering at this point, is there anything wrong with Trish? Well, the only major problem is the fact that you have to beat the game on normal, then hard mode, which needs a lot of patience from the player. My only complaint, and this will be very subjective, which is fair, I am stunned when I went through the game that she is not even mentioned. Trish played a big part in the first game, and her not being here or even having her name not mentioned once is insane looking at it. Think about it, at this point she is Dante's business partner, and her not being here is just strange. Don't get me wrong, it's cool being able to play as her, but it does bring questions from a story/lore perspective. Before we get to the behind the scenes, I want to mention a few minor things that I really liked about the game. Firstly, the designs. This game has my favorite Dante design. He looks very mature here and the outfit is really nice. Lucia looks pretty cool as well, and her Devil Trigger form is great. The Diesel costumes though, not the best. It just seems like they ran out of money or something. I don't know, it looks odd. Also, Dante has machine arm guns, which, well, they definitely work in game, I can tell you that much. For a game that's not the best, the music is pretty good. Again, it's always going to vary for everyone due to how music is in general, but for me, it works here. Just to name a few I really enjoy, I like Lucia's battle theme, the Divinity statue theme here is really nice, and even the final boss theme is pretty good. My favorite might actually be the menu theme, which is unlocked after beating the game. Underrated stuff here with the music. After all this, there is one question that remains with the game, that question being, what happened here? We had a great entry into the series, and how did the sequel fall this short? Well, we do have some info about it, which I'm going to share. Let's start with the big one. This game was not directed by Hideki Kamiya. It was essentially given to another director who was, believe it or not, unknown. What happened here was, after a year of development, Capcom was disappointed with what was going on under the direction of the game. One of the most notable things the devs did was make all the levels 90% larger. Well, you could say it definitely happened, but it doesn't have much polish to it at all, hence why exploring certain areas is not fun. Another notable thing was the usage of survey data from DMC1's gameplay. This was not implemented well at all. Yes, this one was easier, but also too easy in a bad way. It's also rushed, and you can see it as certain levels should have way more to them. All this awful back and forth with bad direction and survey data eventually led Capcom to remove this unknown director. Slight assumption I am going to make here, there must have been some contract somewhere to have it so this director is unknown. To be fair, I wouldn't want a bad reputation with a bland project, so that's my thinking on that. After the director was moved, Hideaki Itsuno was placed as the new director of the game, but it was still on a hard deadline as it couldn't be pushed back. Note that this game only came a year and a half after the first one. It might seem reasonable, but due to the problems beforehand, Itsuno and the team only had 4 months to fix the mess and turn the game into something playable. I mean, imagine what the game would have been like if it was still under the previous director. I feel bad for Itsuno. He was mainly known for doing fighting games, and getting dragged into this was not good. Yes, he is very talented, but even the most talented people need time, and 4 months was not enough. That's the major behind the scenes stuff, but honestly for me, getting through it was tough, even with the rare moments of greatness.
King? Yeah. Here's your crown.
There's more miscellaneous stuff that I want to mention quick, but that when I played, just came off as strange. Dante's personality is of course different this game. It's been memed in fact as the years have gone by, and while I do like certain things about it, it is a step down from before and even after. He does get a few moments which are good, but he is mostly very quiet and doesn't even taunt the bosses either. It is clear as to why he is like this because of the events of the first game, which, well, I don't blame him, but when it comes to this one's story, he is just there to help and is not really a focal point at all. The story is more Lucia-centric, while Dante is just there. A lot of the plot twists and story progression are in Lucia's route, and if I'm being honest here, Lucia's route is better as there is less to play, 13 missions compared to Dante's 18. The only real bad part for Lucia is the underwater parts, but again, not really unexpected. Personally, I think the stuff that came off the strangest was Dante not even mentioning the events that happened beforehand with Virgil and Trish. There is a little bit of subtlety with Virgil, which is nice, but nothing that stands out, and as mentioned earlier with Trish, she is story-wise not even here or mentioned at all. It might not mean much to some, which is fair, but personally I thought it was very strange considering how important these characters and plots were beforehand. It's safe to say that DMC2 is disappointing. With a ton of behind the scenes issues, the project being given to a team that had no idea what was going on, the gameplay itself not even expanding on what made the first one so great, and so on, it's not hard to see why this one is looked at badly. It It had the potential to be great, and it did have a few ideas which were good, like playing as two characters, but sadly it didn't end up well. Director Itsuno had to put his name on the line, but the thing is, at least this isn't the end of the story, just a bad chapter. I don't know about you, but I got a feeling that the next chapter will be motivating, to say the least. We shall see when that day happens. Just want to say thank you all for watching the review. Not gonna lie, it was a tough one, but I'm glad we got it done. If you want to see more reviews / discussions on games past and present, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want updates on when new videos are coming out, follow them socials. Thank you for watching and have a stylish day.